We are all here today to talk how to get hired. Get your cameras on. If you want to ask questions, I ain't answering questions otherwise. Actually, that's fine. You can, but do get your cameras on. Thank you, Mason. What a wonderful visage. Is that how it's pronounced? Who knows? Let's open the chat. If you get any messages, people, yeah. Hi, Karen. Hi, Josh. Hi, Jay. Lovely to see you all. You all look fab. Hi, Sophia. Fab to see. Hi, Rick. Miguel. Toluwanami, fantastic. Sorry, Toluwananimi. Lovely to have you. Alyssa, oh, wonderful people. What a pleasure to have Kyle. Well done. Look, a movement is beginning here, people. Uh, Adolfo, welcome. I think I recognize you, Adolfo, but welcome back. If so, lovely to have you. Put in the chat, people. I'm going to open the chat up. It is now open. It should be. If anyone messages you saying anything unpleasant, you know, or uncomfortable, or I have to say that, but we have a wild person on the internet who has made it their life destiny to come in and cause issues for you all. So if anyone does say anything unpleasant to you, please, hi Rick, welcome. Please do message me and we will remove them. But for now, if you put in the chat a hello and where you are in the world and where you are in your, I guess, software engineering journey, and where you found out about the talk. So yeah, where are you? Look at that hype enthusiasm from me. I keep thinking, I listen to some of the TikTok voices and I'm like, I wonder if my tone of voice will end up sounding like, you know, when you listen to news reporters historically, you're like, why do you sound like you're doing so much? And I listen to, the latest TikTok, the one where, it's like a good embodiment of it is, what's her name? Sydney Sweeney. Sorry, my partner knows exactly what I'm talking about. They just shout it out for me. Sydney Sweeney bringing like nothing to the tone of their voice. But of course, what they just think is they're bringing, a new sound. And when you hear like the people in the 50s and they do too much, like in broadcasting, if you don't do that, you're not doing less than, you're just not doing something from a very old-fashioned sound. So I'm wondering if I'm going to sound like that. Maybe already. Okay, where are you? What stage in software engineer journey? And where did you find this workshop? There you go. And we people today are going to explore together how to get hired in this era based on some of the insights from Codesmith, which is the coding school that I run, we run, which we run because it is a rather not only do I run a coding school and teach in that program, I also have to run the company, and so I just get hilarious messages from people. That is the nature of running a company. Okay, here we go. We're going to talk how to get hired in this era. I'm so delighted to have so many friendly faces on the chat. We have the wonderful co-host with me, Nesta Kyanan, who is a alumni advisor at Codesmith, a part-time fellow, a graduate of Franciscan University of Steubenville, in with a master's in theology. What a great background, people! What a great background. But let's get started and screen share. My messages are closed. Good. Here we go. So we'll spend a couple of minutes talking about Codesmith, given they are the sponsor of this workshop, and then we will dive into. Oh no, that's not the. There you go, Nesta. There we are. Then we'll dive into how to get hired as a software engineer in this era. I was talking to my partner a few minutes ago and said, how can it be that software engineering is the hiring is while not perfect, still very much there. If you look on the Codesmith homepage, this was just in a 60-day period, just like a lot of offers, a lot of opportunity, but the commentary online remains not in the best place. But finally, things are even starting to evolve on that front. We had an alum who announced a bunch of hiring at Google for software engineering positions. I'll be honest, there ain't been much hiring at Google for software engineering for a bit. So things are feeling good. But how do you get hired as a software engineer in this era? So step one, what is it to be a great software engineer in this era? What are the things you need to have? Step two, where can you do it? Where would you do it? We'll see that primarily, for one thing, hybrid or remote. For another thing, you're probably going to find the industries that are hiring most aggressively right now are things like finance and healthcare. All of that's starting to evolve again. Why would you do it? It isn't a gold rush right now, although it is a lifelong opportunity, to be honest. And then how do you get paid to do it? Which I'm sure is a lot of your all goals to learn in this session. But also, I want to hear all and any questions you have, people, including, I'll just put right now immediately in my LinkedIn so you can DM me with questions. Oh, we're even probably live streaming, aren't we? Let's just check the live stream. How do we do that? Maybe I'll do it on my phone. So we can check the live stream as well. Where's my phone? Here we go. And we can answer all and any of your questions. Use this, people, as a chance to send me your resume. Send Nesta your resume. Nesta's advised many alumni on their approach to their careers. So send Nesta, DM Nesta your resume in here as well. That's fine. And then you've got my LinkedIn there. Let's make sure we're hitting people's needs in this workshop. A quick look here at the Karen Do. I feel like I thought I knew that name. We've had maybe some other people. Like Do is maybe a typical Vietnamese name, so maybe I'm overthinking that. But welcome, Karen. Is it a Vietnam? I think it's a Cambodian. Anyway, sorry, maybe we've had someone else that's the last name Do. But welcome, Karen. Yeshu Fab, lovely. That's great. Is that CS, Codesmith, or computer science? The number one major of people admitted into Codesmith is computer science, so it could be either. Akron, sorry, is it Akron, the Ohio big town? I don't know the name, how to pronounce it. 1 second. I have my coffee now. Thank you, Mitchell. Welcome. In the industry, looking for a job market is brutal. Let's talk strategies, Mitchell, to get you there. Great off Meetup, love it. Cambria, welcome. Yeah, Adolfo. Battleship, build Battleship with Vanilla.js. Fabulous, Sophia. Hoping to find an internship. Most Codesmith grads don't take internships. They take, mid-level roles. That being said, two recently did start internships with Brian Holt, who is, some of you will know, one of the most prominent people out there in the tech industry. So I want to go and look up. He's super cool mentor. Ran all of VS Code when at Microsoft. Pretty cool. Okay, great, Carl. So a lot of people with a really good, extensive experience. Welcome, Christian. Sorry to take a bit of time. I want to make sure that we're hitting on everybody's backgrounds. Aiden, CS grad, fantastic. And Michael, Toronto, DevOps. Okay. My need to listen to people talk about software while I'm sitting here coding with Copilot is comforting, right? That's sort of hilarious, but great. All right, people, let's get going. So we'll talk about what makes a great software engineer at this point, because that is both going to hopefully be I've got to spend a couple of minutes talking about what Codesmith is. It's a program that what's it called? It's a program that teaches you to be a software engineer, but some unusual quirks that don't make it sound quite like your typical coding boot camp. So while the language you learn is JavaScript / TypeScript, over half of grads, people like Nesta, I don't know Nesta's stack, but don't even use JavaScript. They use these other languages. That should also be assigned to all of you on what makes a great software engineer. It's that versatility. Students, funny to call them students when they're actually contributing to tools like TensorFlow. Again, everything here you can do yourselves without doing Codesmith. If you do Codesmith, you're required to do these things to help position yourself as a software engineer, but you can do this yourself. You can contribute to open source software like TensorFlow, the main neural network interface or platform for development, but this is TensorFlow.js, the implementation of it in the web browser. And then it also, again, a coding bootcamp, and yet the number one incoming major is computer science. Curious place, but I think somewhere that is designed, and to quickly give you a sense, to meet the moment of today where software engineers do need to be ready to work across diverse tools, work with fast changing tools, and work on things that previously were not even really softwareizable. So think about things like legal advice, finance advice, healthcare advice. This is a remarkable time to be a software engineer, albeit, as one of our members in the chat just said, whoa, job search is harder, my goodness, than it was. So what are the things that make a great engineer? Well, we're going to see in a second, but they're the things which we look for in candidates for Codesmith. So we won't dwell on those right now. Instead, we'll talk about them in a moment. Just for those who are interested, given that Codesmith sponsors this event, these are the things that we focus on in the program. A style of teaching that makes you able to learn any new tool and able to navigate your job search for the rest of your career. You see that in the description of one of the alumni here, Codesmith grads working with a degree of scale that's possible because they're understanding under the hood of how these technologies work. You don't do your standard kind of React bootcamp type thing. With frontier technology, so the program is pretty heavy into enabling you to be a full stack engineer, which we'll see in a moment, a full stack engineer. The stack is front end, back end, infrastructure, dev tooling, and integrating prediction. Prediction is the purest way of phrasing AI. AI is using prior data to make predictions about the future. That future might be the right answer to a given question. That data might be the best set of words to respond to a set of words, a question. So that frontier technology. And then the community is the other big part that makes it work. So obviously a lot of graduates of the big schools, UCLA, NYU, but also alongside people who took a different path, did no higher education. So a really supportive community, because if you want to truly grow as someone who can learn any new thing, you've got to hit a lot of blocks in the program. You're not in Codesmith to learn, you're in Codesmith to learn how to learn. To do so, you need a community of people supporting you through that. And it generates these unusual outcomes for a coding bootcamp, is why I never like the term, but you're also starting to see some real diversity of outcomes, which is exciting. So your classic software engineer, for sure. A bunch of grads get senior software engineers straight out of the program, but also roles like this. And as I say, another one that caught my eye down here, this is recent offers. Obviously, some grads get machine learning engineer, but look at this one here, cognitive software engineer. I think it's a generative AI software engineer working at the intersection of software engineer with tailoring, customizing GPTs. Okay, so that's Codesmith. Nesta, you've got 30 seconds so that we can move into the content of today's workshop on how to get hired as a software engineer, where we're going to cover the things that go into being a great software engineer, where you can prioritize your search, why you're doing it and reminding yourself, and then how do you go about using particularly this flashcard approach to maximize your conversion rate at every stage of the job search from a place of integrity. A lot of us understandably do not feel comfortable with misrepresenting ourselves, overselling ourselves. How do you, from a place of integrity, from a place of earned status in the job search, make sure that people know you are worth their time? So we're going to go through that as well. But before we dive to that, Nesta, I'm going to shut up for a second. I'm going to mute myself and pass to you to introduce yourself as, I hope, somebody who can answer people's questions, respond in the chat with advice, and even give people advice on their careers ahead.
Thanks, Will. Wow, 30 seconds of fame. Hey, everyone. My name is Nestor Kayanin. I am currently a full-time software engineer at SRC Inc. I work full-time remote. I attended Codesmith. I did the part-time program from September 2022. No, December 2022 to September 2023. Anyways, yeah, lots of things here that will say. One of the things that I want to emphasize is he's going to talk about, becoming problem solvers, being um, having good technical communication, and that I believe were two of the skills that really I focused on during my job search, and I really do believe that those were the reasons why the company hired me and why they were so why they liked me so much. Since I only have 30 seconds, I will just stop here and I'll say, if you have any questions, please send them in the chat. After this workshop, I'll also make sure to follow up with each and every one of you. And if you'd like to talk to me more, we could schedule a time. Will, back to you. Thanks for the 30
Beautiful.
seconds.
That was fantastic, Nestor. Thank you so much. People, I was just thinking, really, really great in the room. And there's other people like Nestor who I'm just seeing, for example, Tolo Wanimi. There's a couple of grads who went to the same school. It's worth, talking to your own people who went to the same school, but also, Codesmith alums who are in the industry, just to talk strategies. But enough of that. Let's dive in. Please throw questions in the chat, people. If you feel nervous to do so, DM me. If you feel even more nervous to do so, technologies work. You don't do your standing. I'm just opening my recording of this to see if we can see the chat in there. So if people have chat on the, okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, Josh. I'm seeing you on the YouTube stream. Okay, how to get hired. What is a modern software engineer? We're going to see at its primary core, people, and you already heard it there from Nestor, and I would strongly recommend, and maybe Nestor can share the video link of this, a fireside chat I did. Honestly, actually, both of them. Shit, people, sorry. It's kind of nuts how much these are the days of technical communication. The fireside chat with Brandy Richardson. So she graduated Codesmith, it must have been 3 years ago. 3 years ago. 2 years ago. 3 years ago. Anyway, she got a mid-level job at Microsoft soon after graduating. She's now moved to Google, but she said everything. Firstly, there's a lot of BSing in the industry. So one of the big things to stretch yourselves is to recognize that a lot of people talk a lot about how much they know. And actually, it's funny. Last week, I did a workshop that in the audience was someone called Rico Rodriguez Collins, who was at a meetup that I went to at Yahoo's office in Los Angeles 10 years ago, where my then partner, before I realized I was a raging queer, my then cis female partner was in the audience, and they were passed over by this speaker who was passing out their business cards for potential software engineers. And this person, Rico, called that out and said, "Excuse me, why are you skipping over this person?" And I didn't think they were going to be an engineer. That's obviously pure prejudice, but also it speaks to there is a insider outsider, a lot of talk, so go watch things like Brandy Richardson, who describes in her fireside chat she went to Codesmith, her brother went to Codesmith, now at Humana. Her friend went to Codesmith, now at Zoom. Her other friend went to Codesmith, now at IBM. And I have to, as I said to her at the end, I'm so grateful. I was on a call actually last week with a new faculty member of Codesmith called Jim Pinkelman. Jim is 20 years at Microsoft, senior research. He's like, what can I really do to help Codesmith? I'm like, it's a permanent campaign of convincing people of their validity. If you take away one thing from this talk, it's that a lot of people, myself included, are overstating a lot of the time, or you're at least interpreting. And you might call this imposter syndrome. I don't know. I don't know if I use that term per se, but people are constantly figuring it out. And I am so grateful to people like Brandy, who can, from a position of authority, she's at Google. She was a software engineer hired straight to mid-level at Microsoft. Will stand there and say to you, I don't know what's going on, and a lot of people don't know what's going on. The job is to figure it out and be able to explain it to other people. And Brian Holt, who is this famous, head of VS Code at Microsoft and now heading up, technology and product at SQLite, said the thread running through all of his time in all these positions he's worked at. He was engineer number, I don't even know, 10 at Reddit, 29 people at Reddit when he joined. He built Reddit's front end. He decided it would be done in React. He's the person. Then he went to Netflix, where he built out much of Netflix front end. Then he went to Microsoft leading VS Code. Actually went to LinkedIn briefly as well. Then to Snowflake, I think. Like these are, and he said the thing defining every single moment was technical communication. The most important class he ever took, he said, was the technical writing class he took at his college. That's what all the workshops for Codesmith are about to get into the program. That's what the program's about. It's what you all can do by things like pair programming, by, I'll be honest, if you can force yourself, talking to ChatGPT back and forth. That's a real thing. But that's what really, so what is a great modern software engineer? It's going to be primarily these capacities to problem solve and communicate technical ideas. That's what makes you good. The problem is it's hard to communicate that in a hiring process. We'll talk about how to show that. Because unfortunately, you've not all of you been on the other side of the hiring, but writing, I have 5+ years experience in React. It's like thousands of people are writing that. And that's not, oh my God, I can't get hired. That's, oh my goodness, I need to realize what people are really hiring for. And it ain't 5+ years experience in React. And this can actually be really uncomfortable for people, as we have in the room, with 8+ years experience in, let's say, React. Because it's like, well, that should be enough, right? And it's like, yeah, but they're not hiring for 8+ years experience in React. They're hiring for confidence that you are the kind of person who can solve their problems, whatever the tool is going to be, because it's going to change, and help them understand how and why you're doing it, because they're paying a lot of money and they've got to trust you. 8+ years experience in React does or does not say that you can do that. Ability to explain some of the difficult problems you solved, which happen to be done with React, that's what they're going to hire you for. Okay, so it's pivoting that mindset, wonderfully universalizing as well, people. It means if you can show them that, it doesn't matter if you've got 8+ years. I mean, you're probably going to have more experiences of solving problems, but you could have a ton of great experience solving problems doing open source work, doing problems of your own making, problems of your own making in your own work, automating stuff on your job, building out a client for, a piece of your current marketing job in React on the side. They're all going to give you stories of how you solve problems. And if you can explain it well, you are what they're looking for. Of course, a person with 8+ years hopefully has a ton of great stories to tell of how they've solved harder problems. But it's not the 8+ years experience of React. It's hard to even know what that phrase means. Experience solving problems. But then you better give me some of them. Explain them to me. Okay. All right. So on that note, nevertheless, let's have a map of high value tools. But, this is what a full stack engineer looks like, which is the increasingly, as we'll see in a moment in terms of hiring, at least obviously Codesmith is biased towards this. The typical graduate goes into a software engineer or full stack, essentially full stack software engineer position. Here's the stack. You got front end. That's the stuff you see on the screen. It is not just pixel pushing, making it look in the right position. It's determining what to display when. It's determining when a user clicks something. Like if I highlight this, double tap it, that is a complex evolution of state and view. State is the data behind the scenes. The data is this highlighted? Is just this bit highlighted? Is the select key here? Or is the select key here? Or is the select key highlighting here? That's called state or data. It's the information about the current app, stuff going on in it at that moment. But then you've got view. View is the pixels you see. They have to be corresponding. You have to be the same. So under the hood, it has to know right now that this bit's highlighted. Under the hood, it has to know the text that's in this screen. And then what you see on the screen has to be the same. That's your front end. And, what's displayed needs to look nice. Your back end, servers and databases, is where does all the stuff you see on the screen come from? It's not originally on your computer, or if it is, you wrote it and then it's loaded onto, sent to a server. Computers may be at, in this case, Google's headquarters, but it could be anywhere. LinkedIn's might be on Azure, Microsoft's headquarters. That's the code written by developers to serve up the information for a web page like this or a web app or a mobile app, whatever, and the databases storing all of that information, the trillions, probably trillions of tweets, or at least information about tweets. I don't even have web systems here. I guess it's like kind of really tied into front end. Okay, then the next big bucket in the stack. The stack is the buckets of tools you use to build stuff in software. The next big bucket is infrastructure. That's the stuff that helps get your code that you write as a developer onto the internet, ready to be used to load up websites, to extract user data, to, I don't know, whatever. Not extract user data, extract a user data from a database and, log the user in. The infrastructure is what gets that code running on not one computer, because Twitter couldn't run on one computer, but on a lot of servers. The infrastructure is a vastly important part of the process of a modern software engineering skill set. You might call it DevOps as well. It's an incredibly important part of being a modern engineer. In fact, arguably, is where a lot of the wrestling and problem solving has to happen. If you're building, I don't know, working in a healthcare system, you've got hundreds potentially of different infrastructural components in your tech system. Across a hospital alone, there might be stuff on-prem, that means on the premises. There might be stuff in the cloud. There might be stuff in private cloud. There might be stuff in public cloud. There's vastly complex. Developer tooling. This is what helps make you as a developer as efficient and fast as possible. Then there's the ML adjacent stuff. This is the productized prediction, I call it. So in my book that I'm enjoying at the moment on deep learning, what's the first section all about? Oh no, maybe it's a different book. Oh yeah, it's a different book, people. Yeah, different book. Anyway, this is a more sort of intuition-driven book. But there's a fancy book on machine learning and deep learning that starts all in one place. Prediction. It is all prediction. So how do you build prediction into your products? Well, LLMs are predicting based on large collections of how language has been used on the internet, how it should be used in a response to your question. It's a prediction. So productizing, making it usable by a user, right? That is not just like any other part of the stack. That's not just servers databases, although a lot of it is deploying models, the predictors, onto servers, but there's a bunch of other principles around it. That is what it requires to be a full stack engineer now. It's in the Codesmith program, but you can basically screenshot here and make sure you've got the knowledge of these areas. Make sure you've got good intuitions on how a data pipeline is built. Maybe make sure you've got some good ideas about what are the practices around deploying models. And then ideally, maybe have some intuitions around large language models. There's a bi-weekly workshop at Codesmith on those intuitions on large language models, because now you do want to, as a full stack engineer, be able to contribute to a core piece of the product that has some different principles to front end and back end. And that's this ML piece. You're not being an ML engineer, although some of you could. Increasing number of applicants to Codesmith are data scientists doing Codesmith to pick up the engineering piece to become an ML engineer, but you've got to have enough data science understanding to do that. And then finally, you pick your programming language. This is the contemporary toolkit of being a full stack engineer. You want to be T-shaped. That means you have a decent map of how these things fit together. When you hear Django, you go, oh, okay, I can see how that fits into the ecosystem. When you hear Kubernetes, you're like, ah, got it. That's going to be allowing me to programmatically write code to treat a collection of different servers or instances as something that I can scale up, scale down, treat as different components within an overall system, and write code to tell them what to do, as opposed to individual units in a program. I can have whole runtimes and even whole virtual machines or whole instances of a server be added or removed. Are there alternative ways of doing that? It's to get a full map. That's the bridge of the T. That's the kind of a top. A T is like you want to have some knowledge across a whole range of areas, but then you want to have some area that you become really strong in. I would actually, for all of you, recommend, well, I don't know. Some of you will know already. If you've got been around for a bit, you might have something you really dug under the hood of. Um, Codesmith people tend to lean heavily on whatever they did in their major open source contribution bit of the program. If they built some visualizer for Docker use, then they're probably pretty good at Docker. But you can also make it can be anything you want. It could be you're just total expert in asynchronous program architecture. So maybe you read a ton of articles, watched a ton of videos, and maybe experimented with and maybe taught others on how Golang implements asynchronicity. That's very legit STEM, because what it does is it's going to show you and anyone you're interviewing with that you can become an expert in something. Plus, also, it changes your way of thinking. To go that deep on something makes you able to go deep on other things. Okay, there's your map. But as I said, over half of graduates don't use the main programming language they learn at Codesmith, JavaScript and TypeScript, which must suggest that there's something a heck of a lot more important than the tools, tech, and languages you use. Because how can you get a job if you don't even have, the given language that you learned at your coding bootcamp in the job description? Because more important, or at least as important, sorry, not more important, at least as important as your domain knowledge, this is your knowledge, is your understanding of the principles behind software engineering. So I'm not going to dwell on these, besides to say it's what's really happening when code runs. What's really happening? Why do you use classes? What's the real benefit? I mean, if you've done a computer science degree, some of you might be like, I know it's to organize my code, or it's to achieve encapsulation or abstraction. But yeah, but like, feel why. You've maybe book learned that, but like, why would you want to encapsulate your, I don't know, functionality in your data? Why would you want to have them bundled together? And that's also the design architecture principles and principles to try and keep your code clean and easy to pass off to other people without it breaking. And as you have more users, for it not to break it because of scale issues. Okay, so next bucket, these are your key software engineering principles. If you want to get really good at how code executes really under the hood, including functional and OOP approaches, recommend the hard parts workshops out of Codesmith. But yeah, design patterns and are just as important and more permanent, much more permanent than the given tools. Okay. And it's really fun, actually, people. I think just if I give you one key takeaway from this slide, nothing you learned in your computer science degree, nothing you learned at Codesmith is truth. It's not, I'm not even sure if this is a thing to wrestle with in physics, that we apply mental models to help us reason about complexity in physics that is incomprehensible. A parabola, the movement of an object through space, controls for a ton of other things going on. And in fact, one can think about modeling a parabola, this thing, as being a tool for us as humans to do stuff, to make our lives easier to explain the world. Okay, well, bloody hell, in computers, it's definitely that. All the features that you've ever learned, object-oriented programming, I don't know, closure, composability, like every feature you've ever learned, ternary operator, async function, they're all designed by people. I know that famous Steve Jobs quote, "No smarter than you." Well, I think they're probably smarter than me, but not to be, they probably are like, very, very quick people, but they're designing those tools to try and make your life easier, to try and simplify complexity, to try and make you as an engineer more effective. Async functions are not truth. Ternary operators aren't truth. They're efforts by an engineer or a program language designer to try and make your life easier. The principles of software engineering and all these features here are desperate efforts to try to make the reasoning of the human mind able to deal with the vast complexity of a code base. Always know that, people, right? And that's why if we think about, the hope that there can be in some future more human language type ways of instructing machines to build out programs, which would be exciting and promising, it's always going to be a process of designing to try to make you more performative, you, the developer, more efficient, and balance complexity and the flexibility that comes with that with simplicity and the narrowness and specificity that comes with that. These are the kind of trade-offs. So just remember, nothing is true in programming. It's all design efforts with an intention to try and make your life as an engineer easier. I mean, there are, I guess, I don't know, yeah, truths, data structures, but they're still trying to make your life easier. Okay, so we've already hit on the principles of an engineer, the principles of engineering, best practices, engineering principles, but also a growth mindset and resilience. I would, stretching the term there, principles a bit, your knowledge, your technical knowledge of frameworks, tools, and then three other areas that we, at least at Codesmith, value, but from everything I've spoken to every, distinguished engineer in my community, and I do get to, interview them and present with them and give talks with them on engineering. As important as your principles and your domain knowledge are particularly these two. Engineering problem solving. Can you take a complex need specification, not even specification, you've got to figure it out first half the time, and identify the possible implementation opportunities, ways you can build it in tech, in software. That is your job as a software engineer, to convert the need into software. People, it can be as grand as build application that solves healthcare issue in, end to end, to we're trying to work out how to ensure that this notification is not automatically sent on a space creation in a Dropbox instance to collaborators, suggesting it's a new space as opposed to just a sharing of an existing space. That's a very real example that my friend shared with me that they were working on, like narrow. You as the engineer need to understand what's possible in that code. Your principal engineer won't know it. That's engineering problem solving. You've got to also be able to explain it to your colleague, to your boss, to the QA lead, the person who checks that it's still working, to the business lead, to the user, through the errors to the user. That's technical communication. Can you get your conception of that complex thing you're wrestling with into the head of somebody else? And it's on them to focus and hear, but it's primarily on you. And it's your effort, and it's effortful to get that conception of that thing into their head. It could be, by the way, it doesn't have to be spoken. It can be writing. A couple of weeks ago, someone said, hey, it doesn't always come naturally to me to spoken. No problem. It, as much as anything, it's great written documentation. Flipping fantastic. As Brandy shared, it's, or maybe English is your second language, no problem. It's great written. It's great diagramming. The reason she got leveled up in her interview, Brandy, at Microsoft, this is a graduate, as I say, from a few years ago, and who I did a fireside chat with a few weeks ago. The reason she got leveled up was great system design diagramming. Okay, so technical communication and problem solving. These are the two superstar engineer qualities. We'll talk about how to show them off in a moment. There's another implication of them that's really important. In a hot market, definitely less important to show the person who's hiring you how focused and dedicated and above and beyond hardworking you will be, because it's they'll just take somebody who can do some problem solving. In a tougher market, you want to be someone who they respect as a very talented problem solver, respect as a very talented communicator, but that's only half the story. We'll see in the green slides in a moment that half of what they're hiring for, and that you have to persuade them of to make them pay you money to do it, is how dedicated and how much care you will bring to the problems they have. Doesn't matter how great a problem solver you are, how great a communicator you are, if you're not able to show them when you're interviewing All they want to hear people, and I've hired enough, technical adjacent roles myself, is like there is a bad temptation in software engineering and in technical adjacent roles to say, hey, I can do these lists of technologies that you've heard of. I mean, let's say technical adjacent, I can do Google Ads, GA4 or whatever, like GA4, I can do this. And it's like, yeah, but every other person says they have that list of technologies. I need someone I'm going to be confident they're going to do the emotional work and his emotional labor to help me understand my problems and do all they can to solve them. The badass thing about showing experience in problem solving and stories of it, we'll talk about how to prepare stories of it in a moment, and showing experience and ability in communicating difficult technical stuff is that they're hard things to do. Meaning, if you can show and tell stories of having done them, you're automatically showing the person interviewing you or the person you're applying to, you are somebody who not only has the key capacities that make a great engineer, great problem solver, because we don't know what the problems are yet, great communicator with them, because I want to make sure you're actually working hard on them, and that you can convince me, if you've got that experience, that you are someone who is dedicated. Because I don't know how you solve difficult problems and build stories of having done so. I don't know how you explain difficult things to people without a fair bit of emotional labor, a fair bit of hard work. And that's half of what they're hiring for, which is why I would encourage all of you to focus so much on building stories of difficult problems you've solved, not lists of technologies, not domain knowledge. You can't solve difficult problems without showing domain knowledge. You can't solve difficult problems without applying smart principles, but that you focus your attention on preparing stories of difficult problems you've solved and the how and the why, what were the intentions, often in terms of, by the way, in engineering principles. We were trying to improve scalability. We were trying to ensure that the code was better encapsulating our, I don't know, state for this part of the application. You want stories of how you've used those principles to solve difficult problems. They show the key things that make a great engineer, and they show that you're bothered, because they're hard things to show that you've done. Okay, so there we go. That's what makes a great engineer. You want to have those stories, the best thing you can prepare in your job, in the work you do now, is opportunities to develop those sorts of stories, doing hard stuff. It's why it can be really nice to have users in any application you're building, because that gives you the chance to solve hard stuff, because users have a hell of an ability to click silly things and make your life hard as an engineer, which you have to solve. But it's not the only way. If you're building open source tools for others, or contributions, or hackathons, whatever, you end up solving hard stuff. But find the hardest bit, and that's the story you want to tell, because that's what they're hiring for. And then explain it well and practice that explaining, because that's what they want to see. Okay, so that's what makes a great modern software engineer, more than the tools. All the more because right now we're in a period where those tools are evolving, where you have people getting hired for cognitive software engineer in the mid 100K salary. What is I could try to look it up. I can't find any job description on what these things are, because the tools are going to change so fast. They're exploratory roles. Let alone, sure, front end focused full stack engineer, maybe it's primarily React, but maybe they're doing a custom version of it. Maybe, like many, they're starting to roll off React and considering other alternatives. Uh, you know, it's always evolving. Okay, let's talk quickly through these bits here before we then do a pause for questions. So please throw your questions in, people. Know that we're about to hit how do you persuade other people of your ability in these things. Okay. So next section, where can you do it? Well, basically every firm's a tech firm at this point. Finance, healthcare, conglomerates definitely have not been hiring, but they are now starting to hire again. This is the last 500 offers out of Codesmith up until about January 2024. And you can see, while there's a lot of still sort of generic software industry, maybe software as a service, tech infrastructure, there's also a lot of finance, a lot of healthcare and biotech, even automotive and aerospace, a lot of media and entertainment. So really anywhere. And the key thing is, people, you don't necessarily need to feel, God damn it, I've gone to Walmart Labs. I wish I were at Amazon. I'd have a much better engineering culture and maybe professional opportunity afterwards. At this point, part of the consequences of some of those layoffs, which while they were not more than about 20% software engineers during that boom in layoffs in 22 to 23, there was still a bunch of talented software engineers. Those have become the bedrock of the engineering teams at the JP Morgans, the Capital Ones. Why are they going so hard on tech? A few reasons. One is there's opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity to succeed as an organization doing so. The other is they're threatened by the rise of the tech firms entering markets like finance, entering markets like healthcare. Amazon spent $4 billion on One Medical to get into healthcare. Apple has 100 million potential Apple finance customers, and you bet JP Morgan goes, shoot, if we don't protect ourselves, they're coming for our customers. So their growth as legitimate teams of engineers with a great engineering culture, which is also affecting their brand among the engineering community members, is very clear. And that's exciting. That means you can go and work, well, sure, in finance if you'd like to. I saw a couple of grads recently go to something called Sixth Street, and flipping heck, finance tech don't look after people in terms of whatever conversation, whatever. But you can also go work in healthcare and work on the front line of healthcare as a software engineer, building tools that improve healthcare provision. Nesta may know a alum called Gio, who's working in healthcare at a mental health company as a software engineer. You can really go all over now. Probably you're largely going to be focused on remote, which is half of graduates, and hybrid roles. If you want on-site only, which is very reasonable to want, it's definitely harder. And then software engineer is the standard one, at least out of Codesmith, but just know that there's a proliferation of new roles, things like product engineer, things like these, this analytics engineer role is a fusion front end and analytics role. Cyrus here, who's senior software engineer at Tesla, is doing, something almost as close to technical product management or program management as to software engineering, leading creation of new products, building them out, but also leading the creation of them. So, and of course, this role here, I think you can probably tell, which I think is so fascinating, people. Check this out. This job here required 2 years of Python backend experience. Let me, be really clear there, people. Codesmith does not teach Python. So what the heck is happening there? Well, again, it's about the ability to problem solve at that level and show your ability to problem solve. But also this job required that you had a JD, which for those who aren't in the academic world is a law degree. Imagine how, that is the future of jobs, people. Software engineer plus law degree required for the job. So we're seeing a proliferation of creative new engineering titles, some of which even might reward some of your past experiences if you were coming from outside of tech. And my mission with Codesmith has been to put people, yes, many of them are computer science grads, but I just don't love when Sam Altman says, who runs OpenAI, I don't want to be another cliched tech insider, tech bro kind of thing, but. And it's like, if tech has been always wielded by you and you've never been on the receiving end of it as a user, as a teacher using bad software, it's going to be hard to understand the need for, as Brandy puts it, being an engineer with empathy. But you do that, you get to build better things for people. And I do think one of the most powerful ways to do that is for the many of you who are coming into engineering from adjacent fields. And those of you who aren't, fantastic too. You work with those who are. And that is, I think, really a powerful part. But it does mean also that you've got a broader range of role titles that you might start to look at. Okay, final. So there you go. Where were we? Every firm, a tech firm, and you can have impact across all industries and also professional brand opportunity. But you want to find your purpose to help carry you through. We heard some mentions of the tough tech market, carry you through that period. We'll talk strategies on how to, succeed, but also how do you carry yourself through it well. Um, Finding your why for doing this can be very motivating because it is a harder journey than it was, and you want to have whys for the long term. Yeah, Gennaro, I can send the PowerPoint, yeah, at the end as well. I'll put the slides in the channel. For people who are still, I need to check the questions. I'm going to come straight to the questions in a second, people. So please start throwing them in. And before we jump into the how do you get someone to pay you for this? Okay. Find your why. So software engineering, you ain't the coder uncollaboratively taking features to build and having no influence on the product direction, and maybe being kind of outsourced from the core of the product. That ain't going to work for most companies at this point. They need software engineers to be a part of the creative process. Don't get me wrong, you still spent a lot of your time as, sorry, again, quoting Brandy because on my mind, said a few weeks ago in that fireside chat, it is the old cliche of 10% of time writing code, 90% of time figuring out why it's not working. That sounds like a sort of joke, but it really isn't. That's like, great, yeah, figuring it out. You are still going to do a ton of creative problem solving every day, but you are also going to do, as I sat watching my friend working at Dropbox, who went to Codesmith and works directly with the CEO there, working on special projects and in their ML AI team as a software engineer, but in their ML AI team. And I'm watching him like, Jesus, being a software engineer is so bloody hard. As I said, that example I gave of the notification thing, which probably I shouldn't have given exactly, but it was fairly generic, is like it's a heck of a lot of problem solving and going back and forth with the other person on the team to help them understand the problem you're solving. And like you got to like that. I think it's really, really rewarding. I also think it's perfectly reasonable, as plenty of Codesmith alums do, and Brandy Richardson has done, to want to at some point fuse that with other parts of your of a working setup. So Brandy is now a technical program manager, half software engineer, half product design lead, integrating needs of users, things like that. But to do that, having become an engineer who understands how it's really working, that's why I went to learn to code. I hate the phrase learn to code. There's no like learning moment. It's not like I'm now learned. It's a lifetime thing. But I went to do it because I didn't want to be another person who maybe could lead a product building process, but was then going to be pretending to understand how it worked. I wanted to be able to build it. So finding your why, your motivation, and don't get me wrong, how badass is it to be working remotely? I take it for granted. And it's got some downsides, by the way. I mean, I'm thinking I need to get better at immersing myself in a city and networking and whatever. Maybe some of you would, I'm sure, feel the same. But flipping heck, grass is greener. Living life remote as we spent, a couple of months in Mexico City a few weeks ago, and so many alums do as well. You bumping into alums left and right in Mexico City. It's not bad, but finding your why that is particularly tied to the nature of the work, you got to do that. This is not a gold rush. It's not a short-term thing. This is a lifelong ability to impact the core thing of modern society. Okay, so find your why. Let's look at questions, but then we're going to talk about how do you get someone else to understand that you have experience in these things that make a great engineer. What's a portfolio look like in this situation? We'll talk about that. And then building out your flashcard that's going to give you the things to get you hired at every stage of the process. Okay, let's look in the chat and see what we're missing. Oh, wow, there's a lot of questions here, people. Thank you, Mitchell. Great advice about the open source. Yeah, people. There are a couple of ways of diving into open source work. I'll put some links in when I email out after this of communities, including OS Labs, a non-profit we sponsor, that give you opportunities to contribute to open source. I think it comes from this core thing that software engineers and engineering managers who are hiring you. So don't get me wrong, open source is actually hard. I also think that people hiring you, Mitchell, are particularly impressed when you've done it because they know how to solve problems, but they know that your open source contributions, maybe it's a framework or a library or an automation tool or a visualizer, whatever, are designed to help not just solve their problem that they were just working on, but a standardized set of problems similar to the problem they were just working on. So you're kind of working at a level more impactful, even. That's a bit of an exaggeration. In reality, it may or may not be, but they do believe in the power of open source. It's a moral position. It's what everything's built on. And they do believe in the legitimacy of the work you did when you work on it. It's really regarded. Okay. Yeah, Danielle, how great to have great people. Brandon says, what do you think the biggest mistake most boot camps make is? Oh, God. Um, yeah. Um, that might be Fakiri. Um, yeah, surface level stuff, not the how and why. Um, Yeah, that's right. And the reason being is that to understand that stuff is really damn hard and requires a lot of confidence in a program. Because reasonably, if I go and pay $20,000 or $15,000, I want to learn stuff. I want to learn how to learn. Learn how to learn. I want to learn stuff. Not least if you learn how to learn, I then did the learning after that. If one learns how to learn and I go and learn another thing much faster than I otherwise would have, I'm like, I learned that. Why am I didn't get even, they didn't even teach me that. Now, in reality, the reason they're able to learn those things, and that's why we've had to lean as an organization so heavily on the bloody first year graduate outcomes being so much further ahead than boot camps because it helps justify to people, yeah, you didn't learn that thing, but that was by design. Yeah, we didn't explain that thing to you, but it was intentional. That's a pedagogical design. And we failed to explain that at times, but that's the reason I would say. Like the fact that open source stuff is so effective as a way of signaling and doing hard work. Why does every bootcamp not do that? It would literally get more people hired. They don't do it because it's really damn hard. And people rightly go, excuse me, I paid here this program to learn, not to be, have a hard experience. So it takes a lot of conviction in it working. Um, yeah, Dimitri's right. They don't teach the foundations, data structures and algorithms. But you can fill these gaps in, people. Obviously, side pitch to Codesmith. I think something like 5-10% of people who go to Codesmith did a prior boot camp. So there's that. They at least used to be a scholarship for people who'd done a prior boot camp as a kind of like, you know, make it a little bit less painful to do it again. But also always you can do all these things as part of this sort of community here. Um, okay. Uh, 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 uh. What's the bot? Is one of these a bot? There's none of these look like bot comments. I'm slightly worried. Is it just me? Um, Maybe the comments have been deleted, or maybe because yeah, okay. Um, yes, Kiri's probably right. Um, yes, exactly. I think that's very smart. Um, Josh, everything we do is just fancier and fancier ways to write ones and zeros. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kyle and Sarah, welcome. Um, yeah, what's the Brian Holt? I have a guide I'm writing actually on. It's already been tidied up, so I can show you it. It's in the process of being tidied up, people. Um, Figma guide writing. Yeah, I've got someone tidying up this. So I'll give you if you want this link here, people. Oh, hey, how to write talk. Oh, this is still oh shoot, people. I wrote a guide that's quite long on how to write talks. It's basically how to technically communicate, Kyle and Sarah. Let me see if I can get the link working and I'll put it in the chat later. Um, Yeah, Dimitri will talk about how to approach LinkedIn messages. We're going to come to that right away. Um, yeah, Fakiri. Also, Fakiri, forgive me. Is the M uh is it M Fakiri? Hopefully you can help me out on that. Uh
Do you mind if I speak or?
oh, yeah, go ahead.
It's Mansoor Fakir. You
Mansoor. Thank you,
can
Mansoor. Sorry,
no
Mansoor.
no, it's fine. It's fine. I understood who you were talking to. Thank you.
The cause, Mansoor. Thank you. Um, excluding, yeah, Alyssa says, how many ideally should we send a day? Yeah, we'll definitely cover that. Um, Mitchell, yeah, we'll send out the slides. Oh, thanks, Mitchell. Wow. Tolo Animi says, the personal project bar building problem solving skills. So I will just quickly cover this one, Tolu. Before we move on, it's definitely hard to get legit problem solving. Tolly, we have a whole talk at Codesmith called What Can We Build? That is really just a big pitch internally to students, to residents, whatever you want to call them. Students basically, but to pitch to them, um, to pitch to them that there's downsides to doing projects that you might call, as you say, kind of personal projects. The reason being, people, is hard stuff is hard. The hard thing about hard things, I spend hours a day now, people, on this app that I love called Cold Turkey Writer. Cold Turkey Writer locks down my computer until I've written whatever I preset as the number of words to write. And then once I've written them, it will unlock my computer and I can copy or save the text. Otherwise, it's lost. And there's no other way out of it. You turn off the computer and start it again, it's still on. It's still locked down. That's how hard things are. And still, I stand up and I wander around when I've got to write shit. I still wander. I say, I'll go and get my coffee. And because hard stuff is hard. Personal projects have a terrible tendency of avoiding the hard stuff. It's much more exciting and fun to half implement another feature than it is to handle all the difficult edge cases to actually ensure your authentication system is complete, that the login, log out is complete. And yet it's that last bit that might take 4 or 5 times as long where all the difficult decisions and problem solving is happening. So that is the problem. If instead, it's a matter of degree, Tolu. If you're in a workplace and you're trying to automate something, it's not for the company, but it's for your job. It's going to help you. Probably is that a personal project? Maybe, but it's a bit more important, because a bit more effective, because you're going to need to make it work and not break, right? But then also, if it breaks, not the end of the world, it's you. And so you still may not do the hard stuff. We're always all looking for ways to avoid the hard stuff. And yet the hard parts are where all the magic, the ability to grow in these things happens. God damn it. And to be honest, to be blunt, people, a lot of the time, the reason that people go to Codesmith is to basically be held accountable to do the hard stuff so that they build the capacity and build those stories. Okay. Yeah. Tolo, as long as it's really hard. But if you can push yourself to follow through on hard bits and not just get excited by building a new feature, you're better than me. Okay. But there are ways. That's why when you have a job, you definitely get to do hard stuff, because they're saying you ain't being paid unless you do the hard bit. Um, Open source is a bit funny. It's technically not that, but you end up emulating some of the similar things that you would otherwise do, because it's the hard, you can't really do much open source without it being quite hard. It's just difficult. Okay, so now let's talk about how do you get paid for this. Let's first cross the chasm. So you are, let's assume, now somebody who's cultivated some of these genuine hard stories or experience of hard problem solving and or hard communication of that to others. So now you have to, that makes you a good engineer, and the other bits as well, approach and principles and the knowledge. Now you have to be perceived at that same level. These levels here are a bit arbitrary, and I must make an edit to this slide deck. Shit, sorry. I must make an edit to this slide deck. Because I need to, yeah. These are some levels. We mentioned there the Google L3. No, we mentioned the Microsoft Brandy, who was at Microsoft, applied for an entry level. So L3 here would be entry. Equivalent at a lot of non-big tech firms to a mid-level. So if you look at a mid-level job at Bloomberg, a software engineer job, it might have similar requirements and similar expectations as an entry-level job at Google. They call it L3. That's why I've got this 3 here. We heard about the Microsoft person, Brandy. She applied for an entry level at Microsoft. They don't call it L3. They call it 59 or 60. She ended up being up leveled to an L4 equivalent, or what's known as a Microsoft 61 or 62, which would be equivalent probably of something like a senior level at a non-big tech firm. So there's a bit of variation here, people, but in its core, your job in the interview and the application is the incredibly hard challenge of being perceived at the same level that you're actually capable of, not less than. You might be like, oh, but goodness me, I'm going to be over perceived. I'm going to oversell myself. They're going to software engineering interviewing is like that famous Churchill quote, which says democracy is the worst form of government besides all the others. Software engineering interviewing is the worst form of interviewing besides all the others, because at least in software engineering interviewing, by the time you're on site, that means the long interview towards the end of the process, right? 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it might be, you are going to need to actually do problem solving, do technical communication, not tell stories of how you do it and have done it, but actually do it. You don't show, I don't quite know what the capacities are of a business development specialist. I don't know, but you don't do it in the interview. You tell stories of having done it. That is definitely not as good as doing it. The best thing about software engineering interviews is, at least now you can say in the big tech firms, they're doing it is with algorithms and whiteboarding and system design. Feels a bit less connected to actually writing the code, but it is also what you're doing. You are problem solving in the space of technology. It's certainly a system design bit, but you've got to do it. But in the build up to that, you've got to somehow convince, often someone who's non-technical, their job might say technical recruiter, but they're very much non-aware of how the code works and what the job is. You've got to convince them, often in people in like a 3-second glance that they're going to take, that you are of the same level that you actually are, that you have the experience you actually have. And unfortunately, and it's grossly unfair in theory, you can't do so by saying, I have 4+ years experience with React, because you and 500 other people are writing that. So what the heck do you do? Well, good thing is they're not hiring you for your 4+, 5+ years of React experience. They're hiring you for the ability to solve problems and conviction that you have the experience to do so and explain to them how you did it. So we'll talk about how you communicate that on the next slide, but just to finish this slide here, some of you are beyond this level, but roughly there's a junior level engineer, a mid-level engineer, and a senior engineer. And then there's principal and staff and beyond, but roughly junior, mid, and senior. And it really does vary by company. As I said, literally what Google calls entry, Bloomberg would call mid-level. What Google calls mid-level, Bloomberg would call senior, or Capital One would call senior. We have a lot of graduates who get senior engineer at JP Morgan or Capital One, or they're not getting senior engineer at Google. At best, they might get a mid-level if they're lucky. So, like for like is not easy to make, but roughly, more generally, your junior level engineer, which would probably be the equivalent of your intern at Google, or associate engineer, your junior level engineer, they are somebody who is able to problem solve with things they've seen before, using tools they've used before. So if they've seen that similar problem, they can work it out. It was going to take quite a lot of practice on the job to get good at solving new problems. A mid-level engineer is already able to figure out what it takes to solve any new problem, even if they haven't seen it before, using tools they may not have used before, using languages and frameworks, whatever. And this is not just, don't just take my word for this, although I do firmly, I've posted this a few times, or I haven't, but Frontend Masters has posted this a few times, and they do always get a lot of engagement and reshares and reposts or whatever from prominent engineers saying, yep, that's what makes a senior engineer. So what I say makes a senior engineer is not only the ability to solve problems they've not seen before using tools they've not used before, but empower others to do the same. A senior engineer can help other people solve problems they've not seen before with tools they've not used before. And that, simpler said than done, requires the ability to what? Technically communicate. You've got to be able to get your conception, your understanding of how that thing is working, how that problem is defined, how that technical system is built out into the head of somebody else so that they're able to go and actually figure out how to use it, how to do it in practice. That's the definition of a senior engineer. And that mid-level engineer able to solve things autonomously, great discussion on either Reddit or Hacker News, I can't remember which, where an individual contributor, that's a very senior non-manager from Meta, from Facebook, spoke to what makes an engineer a mid-level engineer. What do they say? The autonomous ability to solve problems. And they said explicitly, I have seen people with less than 6 months experience who are mid-level. And I have seen people with 10 years experience who are not. It's the great leveler, people. So how do you develop it? Well, you hit a lot of blocks and you keep doing the hard stuff. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really tell you how to develop that. I suppose I said that's what you want to do, but obviously there is a way to develop it. It's Codesmith, but you can also do it yourself in the hard work when you solve real problems on your job. But you've then got to get good at telling the stories about it. So let's go straight to the flashcard here. The flashcard is a way of thinking about. A flashcard is a way of thinking about your application process. Let's simplify and say there's 3 stages to the application process. At each stage, you might think that all you need to do is show them that you are legit. Let's remember the 5 things that make a great engineer. And let's say you need to show them at each stage you are experienced in all 5 of these things. You have done good problem solving. You're a great technical communicator. You've explained hard things before, or you can explain hard things. You've got good experience with it. You've got a strong understanding of how to solve the problems using the best practices, principles, your approach to solving those problems. You're a non-technical communicator. I didn't dwell on this one because I'm not going to tell you how to be a good or bad person, so to speak, but you're a hopefully collaborative, kind person, and you've got good knowledge that enables you to do all these other things. Explain what's going on, solve problems. So let's say you are those things. Your job at every single stage of the application, when you apply and submit your resume, when you're on the phone screen, when you're on the on-site, is to show them as much as you can that you are experienced in all 5 of these areas. That's only half of it, though. So you will probably think that was that's the job, right? Explain that you're good at those things. Note, by the way, that it is profoundly difficult when someone's looking at your application for 3 seconds for them to ascertain, for them to glean, for them to understand that you are good at all 5 of those things. But we'll talk about how to do so. We will not leave this workshop without talking about how to do so. Think about that as the answer to the question that Mansoor asked about, or Dimitri asked about great LinkedIn messages. Okay. But it's only half the story. As important, especially in a tougher market where you do need to stand out, is the other side of the flashcard. Now, these are the things that show them that you are not only talented, but that you think they are worth your time and worth your talent. It's equal in importance. Having hired so many people, I can promise you, as important is, do I want you, is do you want me? Because if you don't, however good you are, I cannot trust that you're going to bring your all to the role, that you're going to be what used to be called a fit for the role. You have to be good. I have to be confident, and you have to show me how credible, how great you are in those 5, what great experience you have in those 5 areas. And You have to show me your excitement, commitment in a substantive way of me as a person to work with, to work for. Those two sides, they're going to look very, very different at different stages of the process. When you first apply, when you're first applying, the stuff about you might only be 2 lines. They only have time for them to interpret 2 lines that make me understand your experience with these areas. And then the stuff about them, the stuff that shows you care about them, well, you might just say, I don't even have time to say more than I do. I care about your company. I'm really passionate about your company. Or maybe something off the job description. I saw you use React. That's great. It needs to be incredibly powerful to stand you out from everybody else applying. And there's a whole range of ways to show it. You can't tell them, I care. Unfortunately, it's pretty useless because anyone can say it, and therefore it has pretty limited value. You have to show them you care. It's what networking really is. Networking is really saying, I'm bothered. I care. I'm a real person who's invested in your company. That's why I want to talk to you or someone in your company. But there's other ways. There might even be some shorthand ways, some shortcut ways that don't require going for a full chat with somebody for an hour before you apply. But whatever it is, it's something that makes it completely convincing that you are genuinely and genuinely and sincerely dedicated to this job, to their company. And you might be like, what the heck? I'm a talented engineer. Why should I have to prove this? You know, in a hot market, you probably don't half the time. In a tough market, you really, really do. And to be honest, why not? Like, sounds good. Going to be a better experience for it. Both sides are equally important. Now, working back from the on-site, in the on-site, you know, things can be pretty great. In the on-site, showing them that you have experience with problem solving and technical communication is going to be a matter of doing the task they assign you. Now, I can't promise you're able to do those, but you know, all I can say is I would recommend, obviously, obviously Codesmith, but each of you've got your own path that you can take. I would recommend under the hood understanding of programming. So I would go to the hard parts workshops that Codesmith offers on programming and on large language models, the other parts of being a modern engineer. I would recommend those to get good at that problem solving in the interview. But let's assume that, you know, once you're in the on-site, I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh, I wish I could get in the on-site so I can show what I can do. Now that feels pretty good. And then the other side about how dedicated you are to them, well, every way you talk to them, every way you engage with them, every way you ask questions is going to show that. You've got plenty of time to get them excited by your excitement in what they're doing. And again, I can't guarantee all of you in this audience are excited about what they're doing, but I can be pretty confident that Codesmith alums, like, don't have to worry about that. But I'm like, you know, all of you, if you got into Codesmith, you're pretty passionate, excited, and you know, by the time you're in the on-site, the flashcard gets really full of things that they hopefully know about why you're legit, and really full of things as to why they can be confident you care about them. I'm not worried about the on-site. But let's now work back and start with the application. Oh my goodness. This is a bloody nightmare. Okay, how the heck do you show in your application? We heard already from Alyssa, you know, quick applies don't get a hell of a conversion, but they can still be part of it. A quick apply is basically a one-sided flashcard. A quick apply is here's stuff that makes me legit with nothing about why you think the company's special. So it can work, especially if you're super legit. They might turn a blind eye to you not having told them why they're legit. But part of a proper application, and both paths work, by the way. You do enough quick applies and you got a legit background, you probably get some traction. But both approaches work. Part of a full application is showing both sides. But let's say you're drafting a full application, meaning you're putting together a message, you might call it a cover letter. What do you need? Well, about you and about them. About you convinces them you're special, you're distinctive as an engineer. About them convinces them that you think they're special and are therefore going to show up. By the way, quite literally show up. A lot of applications that companies receive are literally from bots. And half of their fear and why they don't respond is, I can't tell this person's real. And if you don't show them why you think they're special, which is clearly, suggests you're a real person as opposed to a copy and paste message. Otherwise, how would it be personalized? I mean, it's getting possible. There's a good Hacker News thread about fake personalization using AI, but it's still pretty challenging. How can you be sure you're going to show up? So what do you need to show them you're special? For Codesmith alums, and you can do the same, you need one thing particularly that signals in a quick glance, just a look out of the corner of their eye, in 5-6 words, that you have solved a distinctively hard engineering problem. So that means if you're somebody, and people throw them in the chat, by the way, if you want to, what you think might be a hard problem, we can try and verbalize them. But that might be, and it's why Codesmith alums really lean heavily on the open source work that they've done. Because if you can speak to, I built I don't know, what was that one that I mentioned in the slides earlier? There's I don't know, where is it? It's on that. Is it on that? It might be on that on the new website. It might be on here. Yeah. So this is one of the alums, Kenny, who spoke. Yeah, they did a gRPC. What is it? gRPC Seek, gRPC Seek open source tool, the performance testing tool, load testing gRPC services. Okay, so if you mentioned that, most recently I've been working on a load testing gRPC tool. 5 words. Maybe you want to make sure it's clear that it's a web-oriented thing. Web browser protocol. The backend was built in Node. Instantly, the reader goes, damn, this person has legit, distinctive engineering experience. No, engineering problem-solving experience. It is hard to solve the problem of load testing for a web protocol. This person's legit. And then they often, at least in Codesmith, lean on compelling technical communication, maybe a talk. So the Codesmith talks are sponsored by a range of different tech companies. One is like a company called Pressable, I think, or something like that. So they'll say, I also spoke recently on the topic of, I don't know, user experience design and different design principles. Not user experience design, I don't know, user experience, I don't know, automation testing. I don't know. Yeah, QA, user experience, QA automation testing, something like that, at the Pressable sponsored Tech Talk series. Those two things instantly signal great problem solver, great technical communicator in one glance. Let's look at some examples from people in the room who didn't go to Codesmith, and we can try and identify the hard problems. But note, even for the person with 10 years experience in the room and the person with 8 years experience, and there's others as well, funnily enough, more effective half the time than saying, I have 8 years experience with a range of applications with these technologies, which is very legit, right? That's real experience. The reader goes, anyone can say that. There's a lot of people who can say, and that sounds like, of course they can't, but it's sadly hollow in writing. It's weirdly better for that person to say, I worked on resolving, I'm trying to think of an example. Hold on. Handling, I worked on a video handling state view reconciliation on a video codec based compression tools user interface. Sorry, it's hard to think what that, boom. And if you give the name, maybe even better, but specific as hell, difficult problem to resolve that is an engineering problem. Not perfectly phrased. and you're explaining it, although not perfectly, in a clear how, what, why you did mode. Yes, sure, it's nice when to reference a difficult open source thing you did, but, and then you can write, and, hundreds of other implementations over the past couple of years. So you don't miss out on the extensive experience. But it's better because what they're looking for is a quick signal that you can solve hard problems and explain how you did it. Okay, that's side one. Side two, something to instantly show them. And this message, by the way, in total will be 100 words. Something to instantly show them that you think they're special. They now know you're special, but they want to hire someone who knows who's special, but who knows that they're special too. Because that means they'll bring all that specialness to bear on their problems. Too many theirs in there. The company wants to know they're hiring someone who is special, but also thinks the company's special. Because that means the team will get all that great specialness from the person brought to work on the special problems of the company. Now, how do you show that when you're writing a quick application? We're going to dwell on this in a second, and I'm going to show you. But at its core, and this is why you can do this with integrity, people, and not feel like you're BSing. At its core, it is something that is quite difficult, which is why it is not something to be ashamed of when you do it. And that is finding something about the company that is objectively specific, not easy to find, it's objectively difficult to find about the engineering team and culture of the company. You might need to go on their LinkedIn. You might need to, and God damn it, people, it works. I've said for now years, well, not a year, I've only given this talk for 6 months, but I said for 6 months giving this talk, I have wanted to reach out to potential mentors or people in industry to say, hey, you want to be an advisor for Codesmith kind of thing. To do so is essentially what you've got to do when you apply. I've got to find the stuff that makes them take me seriously and be confident that I truly respect them, that I'm real, for one thing. And I don't do it because it's so damn hard. Even with my cold turkey writer app, I don't do it. And all of that changed yesterday, people. I sent one. I sent one. I sent one. And did it work? He got back. This is a professor at NYU, and I probably shouldn't spell it out, but like because this is online, but I don't know. Uh, I mean, just like one of the most prominent ML leaders in industry, and I did my bloody look up of their bloody talk. I found the interesting piece in it. I mentioned it. I said how valuable it was. I included the thing that made them take me a bit seriously. And they got right back to me and said, love to hear how you approach that and have a conversation at some point. Ugh, I finally bloody did it. Why am I telling you this and saying how I didn't do it for years? Because it should show you that if you can do it, it works. Why does it work? Because people value it. Why? Because they know how damn hard it is to do. If you're just writing your kind of fan mail to them, it's not enough. It's got to be both sides. Why they're special and why you're special. But if they see that you put that effort in, they can't avoid but know this is somebody who will bring their all to my company. Now, there's other ways you can do it. You reach out to somebody at the company and say, I'd love to have a coffee chat. And then now you can mention that person when you apply. But whatever it is, it's something that now you can also be really quick. Like I was there. I didn't spend more than I did on my phone. I had my cold turkey writer up, had on my phone. I searched the person's LinkedIn. I looked at one of the talks they'd given. I looked at some of the posts they'd done on LinkedIn, and I did a bit of reading and I saw, oh, okay. I'll glance at the clip. I looked at the comments in the YouTube video to make sure I understood what was going on, and I wrote the message. Did it take me more than 10 minutes? No. Actually, I'd even seen the video before, so it was kind of, nice. Did I spend more than 5-10 minutes on it? No, I did not. But it's 5-10 minutes of emotionally laborsome energy. I know not to use that phrase in a dismissive, in an under, in a way that doesn't value it in other settings, but it is really demanding. And that's why it's not a failing of your integrity. You're not BSing when you do that. You're not cheating them. You're not, because what you're not doing is saying, I really care about your company. Show me. Oh, I just really care. No, you've gone and found something about the company. I don't care if you didn't read it that closely. They're not looking for more than 5-10 minutes effort. Even just finding it is enough effort to put you in a different league to every other application. Even just reaching out to somebody in the team for a coffee is putting you in a different league. Now, that allows you to literally say, I reached out to a couple of the team to learn more about the role, spoke to, or didn't even if they didn't respond. It's a bit weird. But the point is, it's the effort. Okay, you need both sides. Stuff that makes you special, stuff that shows them, not tells them, not say, oh, I think you're really special, but shows them. And that's why it can't be something on the job description. It can't be like, oh, I saw your company uses this, or I saw your company really values this from the job description. It might have used to have worked. Since ChatGPT, it doesn't work. Because ChatGPT literally allows you, and they know this, to copy in the job description, right? Copy in your resume and say, write me a letter. And therefore it doesn't work. It needs to be something that, for now, can't be AI automated. It's going to come probably where you can start to like generate these automatically. At that point, I don't even know what we do. There was a very profound moment on Hacker News 2 days ago where someone said, I got reached out to personally by a robot or by AI. And someone had written up a blog post about how they'd written a custom message with a real thing that was believable, that they'd found interesting about 800 people and got an extraordinary conversion rate because it works. But of course, and for now, they had to do a ton of joining together different LLMs and whatever. It's still very far from being automatable for most people. But as soon as it is, shit's going to go down on this approach. I don't know how you stand out when you apply at that point. But for now, it still has a vastly higher conversion rate than anything else because it's hard. Humans are gifted at showing new ways of signaling their determination and care. So we'll find a new way. I don't think it'll be a video because video is still a bit odd to send as an application, but maybe it's hard to know. But humans are really damn good at finding new ways to signal both sides of the flashcard, even when they apply. Okay, almost there, people. The middle one, phone screen. And we're going to come back to, by the way, sorry, how to find some stuff. I told you the example I did, but we've got a couple of examples here as well for how to go and find that hard to find stuff about the company or the person you're applying to. Phone screen, the flashcard gets a little bit longer on both sides. By the on-site, as I say, stuff that's special about you, they'll have a whole book in all their notes. Stuff that you've shown that makes you think they're special, you have a whole book. It's all the questions you ask. It's the way you engage. Phone screen's kind of in the middle. Phone screen stuff that shows you're special. It's actually going to be 3 to 4 stories of your sophisticated, detailed problem solving. It's going to be all the hiring program stuff at Codesmith, which is about turning your experience of solving problems into being good at talking about it. So it's answers to questions like, tell me your experience with I don't know, machine learning tools. And it's you describing, so when I think about, and I've been actually working on this, integrating some, prediction, productized prediction, so AI or machine learning prediction into applications. And I was working on a project recently where we were doing this. We had to automatically I'm trying to think of an example here. So our application, let's say, is a kind of Zapier equivalent. So it joins up different APIs, let's say, where we didn't have 2 particular APIs integrated automatically. On the fly, we were going to predict a integration between those 2 APIs. So let's say it was between MailChimp and, I don't know, Sentry. These are 2, automation tools. 2 marketing analytics tools. So we needed to generate an automatic integration between those 2 that could be used in that moment, at least the starting point. So we're going to integrate to do that. We're going to use machine learning. We're going to use some model that predicts that integration. I'm stretching. It's actually a real example, but we're going to use some model that's going to predict what that integration might, how that integration might function. Maybe it's not guaranteed to be effective, but at least for getting someone to onboard onto our platform, it's useful enough. Okay, what do we have to think about? Well, we had to think about, firstly, our data pipeline, or at least that's what I had to think about as a software engineer. What is the input the user need, which might be the search query they put in that took them to this page on Google. We're going to need to structure that query as the input to the model. I had to start working with the data scientists on what those queries might look like, so that data scientists could make the prediction of how the integration might work, or at least be described on this landing page. I'm involving my idea here. Described on the landing page, be a good prediction of what could be described of how this integration between, let's say, MailChimp and Sentry.io, which are two, as I say, marketing automation tools, might work. And it's going to then return from our model a good description. My data pipeline is going to be that flow of input examples of potential integrations or search queries, sorry, and potential output descriptions of what those search queries might look like. Maybe we're going to use an LLM. Maybe we're going to use LangChain to integrate it, but maybe we're still going to need to do a bunch of customization with our data scientist or our full ML engineer. But my job as a software engineer was primarily to think about how do I ensure that the pre-processing of the data, so the user searched something on Google, it's generated, it's gotten to a page where I'm then going to pass that question to the model that the data scientist has built, and maybe the machine learning engineer has deployed, and the pre-processing to make sure the query that gets shared works and is interpretable by the model, by the prediction, and the post-processing stage, which ensures that the response that's going to then be displayed or provided to the user is usable. And when the user takes some action at that point, like bounces from the page really quickly because it's not a good response, that is new data to improve the prediction by the data scientist, improve the model. I had to think about what would our data pipeline, our flow of data actually look like in practice. That was area one. Area two I had to consider was how could I support the deployment of the model? And actually we ended up building, it ended up being a lot of classic server design, and Docker was the system, was the kind of container system we used and off you go. So it's a story that you're giving as an example of the decisions you made as an engineer. It was a very ML-y example, but let's say you were talking about Node. You might say we were working on an application. It was actually visualizer for, I don't know, Sentry Analytics or something like that. And we built out the server with Node. And when we were doing so, we were really thinking in terms of the type of data we'd use, data we'd be working with. We were thinking about onboarding time for team. We were thinking about the nature of, and then maybe get more to detail. Within Node, we had to assess what framework we were going to use. We chose to use a middleware framework because ultimately the nature of the request was lots of parsing, lots of interpreting of individual pieces of the request coming in to the server, and a sort of list of those. For our team, the intuition behind thinking about that as a series of steps was really well captured by a middleware pattern. Okay, sorry, people, that was a bloody lot. That was like 5-minute examples. I apologize. Hopefully that did give you, though, some good examples, people. And we'll stop in a second, of the stories you want to have ready on this side of the flashcard, specific to your experience, explained as what, how, why. What tool did you use? How did you use it? And why, in terms of some engineering goal you had, that you used it. And those engineering goals, by the way, a lot of the time are it was intuitive. You've got to explain why it was intuitive. It takes a bit of thinking. Why was it intuitive? Not just it's intuitive, but why was it intuitive? Those are very legitimate reasons. Okay, and then you need some stuff on them in the phone screen. How do you get those? Well, for one thing, you bring up any research you did beforehand and you bring it up, even if they don't ask for it. You say, oh, I was curious. I read about the talk that the VP of engineering gave last year. That was exciting. Is that something that your team often does? Oh, I mean, you can probably do better than that, by the way. That's a bad question. But maybe you say, I really enjoyed the bit where, she said they shared that they shared the benchmarks, performance benchmarks. It's great to see that stuff being shared as a learning resource for other engineers. Is that something the team focuses on, kind of sharing knowledge? The recruiter will be like, oh, yes, we love that. You should definitely talk to the engineering team about that. And then just other questions that you have that you can engage with the recruiter on. It's all filling out this side of the flashcard, why they think you think they're special, which is just as important as why they think you're special. All right. Quick addition here, and we're going to come to questions for those who want to stick around for questions. Quick addition here, people. As I said, there's two things that the worst thing is showing this side of the flashcard, the why you think they're special when you apply, because it's just like, how do you even know? And half the time there isn't good stuff. Well, there is, but it's hard to find. One is finding any blog post or writing by that team. And even just a little mention of what was interesting about it goes a long way. It shows them you think they're special, and that's enough to give them confidence that you're real, that you'll show up and you'll work hard. So there's a good post here by Riot Games about fixing bugs, and it's kind of cool that they're showing that in public. You can speak to that. Google or ChatGPT research. The other approach is where they don't have anything, maybe any blog posts or whatever, is to look up leadership on their team. In engineering team, look for the VP, look for the engineering manager, the principal engineer, and likely they'll have some commentary on their LinkedIn, or they'll have some posts they've done, or they'll have some comments they've made, or they'll have some even honestly blog posts or talks they've given. Mentioning that is so powerful. I loved seeing the team, the VP, share some of their values on LinkedIn. I did a bit of research. You might be like, wait, it's a bit weird to do that. There's ways of phrasing it. Like, I did a bit of extra research, was so excited to see how the team approaches their engineering work. I saw Joe's description of the latest features on LinkedIn. That instantly shows them this person goes above and beyond. This person cares. This person did that little bit of emotional labor, hard labor, because it is emotionally exhausting. And I know that therefore they're going to bring that to the job. And again, you might be like, well, why do I need to do that? You're right. In a hot market, you kind of don't. In a tougher market, they get a little bit more say. They want you to be special, and they want to think you think they're special, because that means you're going to bring your specialness to solve their problems. You can even look at junior team members. I don't mean junior titles. I just mean like earlier career team members who are software engineers, and see what they describe that they do in their work day to day. They'll often have a little section on what they do at the job. Migrated Angular code base to React. That's cool. They're really, giving the engineering team some interesting challenges. You don't need to name the person, but you could say, it was cool to see the description of some of the work being done. The Angular migration to React must have been pretty exciting. Boom. That alone signals. Now they know you're special with some clear examples, and they know you think they're special with some clear examples. Okay, people. So there we go. Let's look at questions. Thank you, everybody, for all the engagement. I'll share again my LinkedIn for people who want to ask more questions, including questions you don't feel comfortable sharing here. I'll also share here my Twitter in case you want to, I don't know, tweet at me. Twitter, there you go. And there's my email in case you want to follow up there. Please do so, and feel free also with Nesta to share LinkedIn's resumes. But let's look at some of those questions. Some of those we did get to hit. Which is good. I really appreciate getting to share this with you all, because, I hope that you feel excited by the prospects. Thank you, Rick. Great to see all those people connecting. Yeah, I love that, Tolu. That's fantastic. Exactly. It's exciting stuff. David says, where are the best places to find roles? Some key resources on that, just, on top of the we obviously it's all in the program. I'm not, to be honest, the latest places. LinkedIn is the behemoth. Indeed, Dice, those sort of places are a little bit less effective, although it does vary by country and even by area within the US. AngelList, now known as Wellfound, is quite effective and valuable. Oh, Brandon, that's such a lovely comment to receive. Exactly. Oh, Twitter, sorry, X, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. People, portfolios, and good to see that portfolio there, Josh. Portfolios are, not a bad thing per se at all, just to be really clear. But always remember what they're hiring you for is experience with solving problems and communicating how you did so. So the best portfolio you can have is really a blog of engineering decisions you've made, and even little diagrams about how you did it and the choices you made. That is a really powerful portfolio. I don't quite know how that hasn't become the standard. It's not because a website is the output of the problem solving, right? So you can't backward calculate from it. Don't get me wrong, a GitHub certainly can show problem solving. But code is still the output of problem solving. I mean, you can see bad code, but I can't see like the prompt. What you want to see as someone hiring is what was the prompt? What was the issue? What was the challenge? So writing blog posts about the choices you make. And again, that comes down, and that's hard, people. It takes practice. In fact, Brian Holt, I believe, has on Frontend Masters a talk about how to be a good technical PM. It's basically describing the engineering choices you made. A best technical PM is able to do that. But you, as a great software engineer, stand out like nothing else if you can describe those technical choices you made. Of course, it's also very brand building. You think about your LinkedIn having the top 3 things be legit looking system diagrams of engineering choices you made, the 3 posts, the featured posts at the top. That looks pretty compelling. Yeah, okay. Man's what was it? Sorry, it was Manzar. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. But company was happy with my resume, but not happy I had oh wow. Yeah, I mean that's a bit of a unlucky one there. Yeah, I mean, and also by the way, sometimes I hate to say recruiters and others give you it's storytelling for them. There's often 5 other reasons that they actually didn't pick you. I don't know, literally the CTO knows somebody who knows somebody and really wanted that person. They can't tell you that, can they? And that's often the reason. Or you didn't seem they didn't see this side of the flashcard that you care about them. I hate to say, they can't tell you that. You didn't seem really passionate about our mission, our engineering approach. It's like we weren't confident you were going to work hard. They ain't telling you that. What do they come up with? Always stuff that's a kind of technicality. Oh, we wanted that much more experience with that thing. And maybe, but somebody else they hired didn't have that. It's a very easy excuse. And that's feedback is very hard to interpret in these processes. Not completely useless, but you've got to do a lot of self-reflection and talking through with others often to interpret what was really. Some companies give you real feedback. I'll be honest, the big tech firms are pretty sincere. Their feedback can actually be very constructive. But all the companies give you kind of avoidance. And so just be careful to not, Mansur, take too much from, you were 2 months off experience level. Very likely these are technicalities to avoid other explanations, which might literally be, and no harm, no foul. You didn't seem passionate enough about our engineering, therefore we weren't confident you'd bring your all. Is that fair? Probably not, but it's something you can control. Next time, really engage on the engineering, the passion you show for the engineering approach they're taking, because that will make sure they are confident you'll bring your all to their problems. Yeah, Dimitri spoke about portfolios there, I hope. Nam says, doing course in front of masters. Yeah, I'm doing a talk on AI for software engineers. In the next few weeks, I'll start doing kind of regular workshops on the intuitions behind neural networks and the intuitions behind large language models. So yeah, look forward to, I enjoy doing that. So certainly look out for those. Okay. Any other questions in here that I missed? Sophia, what would you recommend if I have no previous experience? What to put on your resume, or at least get some experience? Sophia, there's a couple of options here. Do Codesmith. No. The couple of options here. One is non-profits. There's one called Hack for LA or Hack LA that I think is really cool. I'll put in the email following up from here a couple of open source communities that are about encouraging early career engineers to contribute to open source. It's such a powerful signal. If you are doing any current work, Sophia, we even have a whole bunch of talks which we should probably turn in. Oh, yeah. Sophia, go on this bit here. csx.codesmith .io, and there's a unit on it called Build with Code that is all about how you can, in your current job, Sophia, or for a non-profit or a family friend, build something that solves legitimate problems. It can be even more easy now, although of course you're going to hit blocks pretty quickly with the help of the chat GPTs of this world. It's definitely hard to do, and it's really hard to benchmark how possible it is if you don't understand the underlying foundations. And if you, to be honest, problem solving becomes pretty instantly a major part of even using GPT generated code, because to integrate it, to go beyond even the basics, you have to, start to wrestle with difficult problems. But you can definitely get a bit further than you could before you could generate code from some degree of human description. It's undoubtedly difficult. That's why it's software engineering still, even when you're using human, explanations of what you want to create. It's definitely difficult, but it's not, it definitely gives you a little bit more you can do. So the big one for me would be SQL queries. I think it's hard to know whether, I still think you need to have a pretty legit conception of what a database is doing, but you can definitely generate SQL queries using ChatGPT to, if you have a SQL database in your workplace, query it and extract the data. A SQL query is not going to be very, it's going to be quite fragile, and it might break easily, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and be inefficient and not, well, then I guess you could say, how can you make this SQL query less of a mess? But you need to define the parameters of these things quite quickly. Within the GPT tools are really useful. The chat GPTs and the Coparts are really useful, obviously profoundly useful, but very quickly you have to start to kind of define, as an engineer's job is, the parameters of what you need. And if you don't have the mental models, but Sophia, hopefully it sounds like you've got some of that already. Maybe you did a boot camp or whatever, or computer science degree. It could allow you to pretty quickly automate some stuff in your work. SQL queries being a classic one. Write some whatever it's called, Google Scripts code or VBA scripts to have a spreadsheet do more complex data analysis. Okay, so those are some good places to start within your own workplace or within your own life. Like, I bet you can do scripting in Notion. Let's have a look. Notion scripting. Am I still screen sharing? Yeah. Scripting. Let's have a look if Notion does any scripting. Because people love Notion, right? Yeah, you see, you got some like options here. That's kind of cool, right? Scripting is code that is not like a complete application. It's code that's doing a small task within probably someone else's application, like Notion. So the other one is Mac scripts are really cool. You could what's a good example? Sorry, I'm getting tired now, so we'll stop in a second. Mac scripting, Apple script it's called, sorry, Apple script would allow you to, I don't know, you might have some tasks that you do every day, like a series of steps, or suppose you have to generate a PDF in the same way every time. Writing and automating that task. Yes, you can use Automator, that's click and whatever, but then to really customize it, you might turn it into an Apple script, which looks a lot like JavaScript. I think Apple script is based on JavaScript, which is very, very similar. You know what I mean? So those are, if you really want those to work, Sophia, they actually become pretty legit. If you really want to automate, I don't know, image processing within your computer, or automate some, Notion task, or you have a Notion board of your daily tasks, daily project management. If you want to automate some pieces of that, or integrate it with Google Sheets, or integrate it somewhere else, you can very quickly be writing some legit software. And you write that script, and then you say, actually, I want to make sure this script is, you could write into ChatGPT, what are some ways, it's not going to be perfect, but they might give you some tips. What are some ways I can clean up script code, and you could even show it the code you've done for Notion and make it a bit cleaner. It might say, oh, and give me the principles behind it. They might, you could perhaps, and this is, by the way, no different to paying for a mentor for coding. Like when I was first starting, I wanted a mentor, and I did some sessions on a platform called codementor.com. GPT is just that. Say, hey, give me some feedback on this code I've written to automate my Notion personal dashboard. everyone loves these bloody Notion personal dashboards, right, to one's life. Give me some feedback on how to make the code a little bit cleaner. And it might say, oh, you could separate it into functions. That will make it more reusable. Or now, Sophia, you're able to, especially if you take it a bit further, to write on your resume, and it might be more under projects, right? Personal projects, whatever. But let's say just engineering projects. You're able to describe this and describe the choices you made. Made code more reusable. And even if it sounds very trivial, separating into functions, it's still more than, anything else. And you can take that to the next level and the next level. And that's really, hopefully, Sophia, exciting to know that those things, control of your resume is within your hands. It's not measured by anything more than the ability to explain good engineering choices. Okay. I think people were there. Thank you, John. That's lovely to receive. And Brandon, exciting for that confidence. Yeah, Akihiro, it will go up on the on the channel. Dimitri, are we hiring? We have a lot, Dimitri, of Codesmith alums for the software stuff. So I would but Dimitri, please connect with me on LinkedIn and give me a little message and let's see whether there's any connections that can be made for sure. Thank you, everybody. We're out. We're done. Thank you, Salvatore. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Put that on the resume. I hate to say, if you write it up right, it ain't a bad thing. Thank you, Mason. Yes, brilliant, Mason. And can I just say to Mason there, that sort of communication there is intentional, thoughtful, and will carry a weight in the job search. Put that style of communication in your outreach and you'll go places. Thank you, everybody. Please stay in touch. I hope some of you have connected with each other as well. That's it, people. We had a wonderful group of, what was that, 40, 50 people, and lovely to have you all. There we go. Please reach out and stay in touch. Thank you to Nesta for engaging everybody in the chat and answering people's questions. We're out. I'm going to go and have dinner.